Hello everyone, I am Chang Guo from University of Birmingham, and today I am very delighted to present my work on understanding the changes that happened in the site of Mogao Caves, which is a site in China's peripheral area. The main topic that I am presenting today is about the local meanings of a site as its levels of designation rise, its heritage governance structure sophisticates, and its capacity and technologies of heritage conservation alleviates over time. So whether the changes are opportunities for a site or challenges, especially to its local actors under an everyday life setting at this cross-boundary area. In this case, I define the unique contact of cross-boundary character of my study case as peripheral. By using more the terminology of peripherality, I emphasize the central resources that are usually located far away and opportunities for development that are relatively scarce. So this study provides answers to these questions from understanding changes over time that appeared in the study case, in terms of its growing recognition and heritage governance transformations. Talking about the site's landscape, it is crucial to understand the case contact, its location in China, its peripherality, and its recognition changes over the course of China's heritage legislative progress and heritage internationalization process. So firstly, let's look at this map. The location of Dunhuang is around the red dot area here, the west end of a long, narrow, corridor-shaped province. Today we call it Gansu, but previously, historically, we call it the Hexi Corridor. It is located on the map of China here at the left-hand side corner. As you can see from the map, the area around the corridor where Dunhuang is located, respectively, are the Gobi Desert to its north, the Qilin Mountains to its south, and two autonomous regions, which are the multi-ethnic living habitats in China's northwest. One belongs to Xinjiang Uyghur people, and the other for the Inner Mongolians. The Qinghai province is another peripheral area that is adjacent to the corridor area, where the geographic topography entails the high plateau that goes further into the Tibet region. So the site is located in peripherality. And this peripherality goes to three different aspects. The first one is geographical peripherality. As what the maps previously showed, the site is located in the northwestern region of China on the edge of Gobi Desert, which is far from the government authorities and also other urban landscapes. The second aspect is the cultural peripherality of the site, as the site is located at the cultural crossroads between China's majority Han culture and the western region of China. Historically, it is the borderland to the vast Mid-Asian and Eurasian cultures along the Silk Road. The third peripherality is the site's economic peripherality, as the northwestern region in China has long been one of the economically poorest regions. So, because all three aspects that show the peripherality of the site of Mogao, its designation changes over time become an important and representative feature to understand the overall changes of the place, Dunhuang, where Mogao is located. Mogao's designation has gone through changes which makes the site gradually transformed from a nearly abandoned area from around the early 1900s to a national designation in 1961, which is after China's first heritage law was implemented. After the 1980s, the law matured in 1982, which also marks the growing fragmentation of ever-rising heritage management agencies in China, as well as the advent of China's ratification of World Heritage Convention and the whole UNESCO's World Heritage nomination and safeguarding procedures. Along the timeline of China's heritage legislative progress and the move into the international arena of heritage discussions over conservation and management, Mogao's World Heritage designation, which is in 1986 and 87, has been a representative Chinese case, as it was one of the first 6 Chinese sites that have been nominated and successfully designated into the World Heritage List. This also marks the rising recognition of the site's outstanding universal values, and most importantly, a chance to reach the potential to develop the site and the whole region of Dunhuang. From opportunities emerging in heritage perspective, through the improvement of conservation techniques that the site could not achieve during the hardship era before the 1980s due to its peripherality, and then spread to develop and open up the opportunities for the site to secure more national top-down assistance from heritage area to the wider regional cultural and tourism development resources. The tendency of more changes given by the policymaking for the region to develop meets the desperate needs of this peripheral area to grow with national support. Simultaneously, the national authorities also want to achieve positive changes, especially economically, as a result of the site's international designation. The site's first international collaboration, which is with Getty Conservation Institute in the United States, starts a little earlier than the site's actual World Heritage designation, but it becomes a long-term and fundamental international collaboration that decisively helps the site to grow fast in its practices of conservation. This international conservation assistance and collaboration also exemplifies a good case for UNESCO and the World Heritage conservation strategies, so that Mogao became a representative conservation case not only for the Chinese sites, but also for the World Heritage sites under different contexts around the world. But under these good effects that were underpinned by the international heritage collaborations, what these changes really mean for the ground-level actors and participants were not fully understood. This becomes the rationale of this study. So before looking at the actual study site of Mogao Caves, what is needed is to understand the existing theoretical discussions. So from the existing relevant literature, 2 main themes emerged across the body of heritage discussions that are related to the previously mentioned research aim and objective of this study. First, about the heritage governance and the related World Heritage issues. The most important theoretical discussions talk about the dominance of heritage values given by the so-called Authorized Heritage Discourse, the HD, which highlights the existing value and criteria set to understand the value and aesthetics of heritage that are originated from Anglophone cultures or the European heritage prototypes. World Heritage, as a key example program, exemplifies Eurocentric value impacts and thus have been critiqued as disseminating these exclusive value criteria to international heritage productions. The imbalanced value have emerged in understanding the typology of heritage, the criteria set for nominating the sites, and strategies to maintain and conserve the sites. These aspects have gone through a timeline of reflections and scholarly discussions. The 1993 report by ICMOS marks these reflexive thoughts by World Heritage Committee and its professional advisory bodies. To improve the value imbalance embedded in understanding cultural and natural sites, the sites that shared European values or not, 4 Cs were put forward in the 2002 Budapest Declaration as the World Heritage Global Strategy, so as to strengthen the credibility of the World Heritage List with more practical and inclusive strategic objectives to ensure better conservation, capacity building, and communication with the public. In 2007, the fifth C for community, was highlighted as the moving forward enhancement for more inclusive participation into the World Heritage productions. The role of communities has been emphasized as in need of empowerment through the implementation of the World Heritage Convention. Under these existing theoretical discussions, this study seeks to better understand the tensions between the authorized and professional heritage practices and the local everyday engagement by navigating through changes in the ground-level practices in the study site's exclusive management institution, the Dunhuang Academy. More broadly speaking, it is to focus on the on-site strategies and its evolutions in dealing with heritage materiality and asks for more awareness of who the local relevant case stakeholders have been or have changed, and how their roles have been transforming through all kinds of heritage development, not only the heritage development through tourism. The tourist serving policies and their impact onto the ground-level heritage practices have not been thoroughly discussed, as it has been under the shadow of the main interest that the scholarly discussion have been distributed to the tourist and local tensions. Thus, this study will focus more on the long-existing on-site heritage practices, mainly the conservation practices, but also other preliminary approaches to maintain the site that have originated through the local-based institutional and wider communities through their local networks. This is a fundamental step to understanding the wider local communities and their long-term involvement with the site under the everyday setting. To collect the local first-hand data and long-term historic narratives from previous generations of ground-level heritage actors, this study has carried out a field case research in the summer of 2022 using the qualitative approach, including the methods of interviews, observations, and some on-site supplementary archival research. From the local data analysis, the site's governance, which has been implemented by the institution of Dunhuang Academy, have been analyzed as the underpinning evolutions for the site's local implementation of top-down conservation protocols. The site's first conservation plan, the 1943 Conservation Plan, was drafted by the Republic of China, which is before 1949, by artist professionals who formed into the preparation committee to initiate Dunhuang Academy. Later, following the founding of People's Republic of China in 1949, the same institution's second plan, the 1951 Conservation Plan, was drafted by architectural, archaeological professionals and artists who became the main dominant conservation practitioners from 1950s to the 1980s on site. During the post-1980s period, the Getty-assisted fabric conservation projects have led the drafting of updated Mogao's master plans, which was directed by ICMOS China and state heritage authorities. This period of value criteria have been dominated by the scientific conservationists who concentrate on Mogao's mural fabric conservation and consolidation. The China Principle, which is drafted and accomplished in 2015, have become the principal work that set the Chinese conservation value criteria, in which Mogao caves have become a representative prototype. It is also a creation of collaboration between national heritage authorities and the international professionals, especially those from Getty, who both work closely with the heritage conservation and evolution at the site of Mogao under the ICMOS China's assistance. The above-mentioned 4 milestones for the Mogao site and the wider Chinese sites conservation along the timeline not only provided information about changes in the site's national social-political environment, the main institutional heritage conservation duties, the ground-level practitioners' professional specifications, and their power dynamics within the implementations of these top-down policies. Moreover, these involving underpinning conservation protocols have led to practical changes in the site's conservation approaches over time. Local data showed that a fundamental change in the site's ground-level conservation approach occurred when the overall institutional planning authorized the adoption of scientific techniques following the international collaborations and the almost parallel World Heritage introductions during the 1980s. So in the pre-1980s, the conservation approach was introduced by the artistic and architectural conservation, using the techniques of artistic and sculptural and architectural handcraftsmanship for remaking the murals and the cave structures for consolidation. But after the 1980s, the approach is dominated by fabric material analysis, using the scientific experimental techniques to make materials for delicate fabric consolidation and conservation. However, both the conservation approaches and the collaborative senses that makes these ground-level practitioners a community began to change and cease gradually when the scientific approach makes conservation a practice of measurement and analytical rather than artistic and human as agencies. The change of heritage-making agencies through the post-1980s domination by scientific fabric conservation made the delicate mural conservation from impossible to possible. However, this fundamental change of conservation also directly changed the atmosphere within the institution among different professional sectors, and the connections that once established by community sense of networking through different sectors of ground-level professional practices have been vanished. These forms of changes through conservation practices at the site over time show that the impacts of evolving top-down governance from pre-World Heritage designation to afterwards showcase tensions between the site's received attention and assistance on conservation practices and strategies, and those for enhancing the relevant local ground-level stakeholders and the local everyday engagement with the site. The gradual marginalization of local knowledge and involvement occurs through the loss of agency among ground-level conservation practitioners, as their ways of conservation began to lose legitimacy under the later top-down HD of heritage conservation, especially in the conservation of delicate fabrics that this peripheral site once could not achieve. The marginalization happens due to the tendency that the top-down policymakers and the institutional authorities could not realize that generations of ground-level practitioners have continuously made the heritage of the Mogao site through their safeguarding approaches, whose handicraft techniques have been connecting locals and the wider grassroots together with the site. The top-down under-representation of the ground-level practice changes and their gradual limitations in assessing and using the site, as they once had to build and maintain the on-site communities, will worsen the erosion of the connection between ground-level institutional practitioners and the site, as well as those existing networks between the wider local residents and the practitioners, and to the site as well. The community ties further broke due to the reduced attention to the site's integrity as a holistic landscape. The regulation and different limitations given to the disempowered practitioners' use of the site, especially the areas where materials have been highly valued, gradually separate the connection between different areas due to the authorized discourse that attaches more value to conserving the materials and their located areas within the site. This worsens the understanding of heritage typography, as it emphasizes the material forms of heritage rather than other forms, such as the natural landscape around the material heritage, the connections that these natural landscape did to the meaning-making of materials for different local groups, and those who use and access these landscapes that were different but coexisted for a long time. These different local uses of natural sets, whether around the built heritage or not, also suggest a shift in economic production within an everyday framework. But due to the impacts of HD, the site becomes not integral to the local everyday life, production, and community value makings. To conclude, this study examines evolving governance through conservation approaches at the Mogao Caves, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and highlights how these approaches change at the ground level and are most contributive to the transformation of local engagement as long-term changes that chronologically transformed local everyday economic production around the site area, and how local on-site and wider communities continue to get involved with the site. This study have offered insights into the challenges facing sustainable ground-level heritage practices and emphasizes the tension between material preservation and cultural sustainability in peripheral contexts. This study has shed a focus on understanding the long overlooked impact of on-site spatial planning and regulational changes. This study also highlights the intermediary role of on-site institutional practitioners, especially before the 1980s, as their power dynamics through a gradual procedure of underrepresentation and disempowerment within the evolution of hierarchical heritage management structure amid advances in conservation technology. The ground-level conservation practitioners' use of local knowledge to involve the community has connected the top-down heritage authorities with the grassroots residents. This indicates a practical way for further heritage management to become more inclusive by better incorporating local knowledge. Thank you. This is all of my presentation.